never thought I would be a business person. I left school at 16. I had multiple jobs. I always thought, that was the route. But by the time I got to 30, I'd had 17 jobs. And I didn't get sacked from any of them. I walked out. I mean, looking back, I hated being employed. I hated being told what to do. The secret was absolute reliability. I got quite a bit of business later on from people phoning me up because they'd been let down. And I thought, I'm not ever going to give that inch. I'm never going to give the client the thought that, oh, Colin's let me down, I'm going to go out and find somebody else. Just by being able to say, yes, you can have a job, and it's pretty obvious, but you can change people's lives.
Well, Colin, thank you very much for joining me on Success Masters podcast.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I mean, you are a serial entrepreneur. You've done so many things. You've earned an MBE as a result of that, which is a great honor to have. So where did that all begin?
Wow, Sanjay, it's quite an interesting story. I never thought I would be a business person. I left school at 16. I had multiple jobs. I always thought, that was the route. But by the time I got to 30, I'd had 17 jobs.
Wow.
And I didn't get sacked from any of them. I walked out. And
all right.
I just didn't. I mean, looking back, I hated being employed. I hated being told what to do.
Okay.
And I got to about 30. It wasn't going so well, really. I was a lodger, not much money, and I was completely demotivated at the 17th job, but thinking, I don't know where I'm going to go. What do I do now?
Yeah. What sort of jobs were you doing? What was?
Blimey! I was
catalog of 17 jobs.
Yeah, I was managing teams of window cleaners in Canary Wharf.
Okay.
Which was quite interesting. I mean, I went up in one of these cradles that you drop down the side of a building, and the world is a very different place when you're 20 floors up outside of the building. It's I felt that probably wasn't my future. Let's put it that way. But it was, they were nice people. It was quite a good gig. But the thing that it gave me, actually, was it gave me really good, solid relationships with the people who were managing those buildings.
Right.
And when an opportunity, I'm very passionate about the environment. I hate waste. I was thinking about recycling. This is 1989. There wasn't a lot of recycling happening in companies. And just before that, Mrs. Thatcher made her one and only intervention on the environment. She made a very famous speech about the environment where she did actually talk about climate change, and she was quite ahead of it. There was a kind of a bit of a zeitgeist about, well, what can we do? And I thought, well, what could I do? Maybe I could do something. Maybe I could start recycling paper. And very happily, a friend of mine rang he was a vice president at the Chase Manhattan Bank. And he said he needed to get paper recycled. And I thought, well, someone's knocking on my door. Someone's trying to tell me something here. And I, cut a very long story short, set up a paper recycling company. I'd had about £150 left. I'd wrapped about 4 cars around lampposts and various other bits of road furniture, and I had no money left, really, just this 150 quid. And I bought a 20-year-old transit van, which was absolutely decrepit and not roadworthy. It was disastrous, but it was a receptacle for paper that I was collecting. I was out at 5 a.m, during my lunch breaks, in the evenings, loaded up this van full of paper, drove it round to Cold Harbour Lane in Brixton, where there was a paper mill, and drove onto the weighbridge. And I said, I've got all this paper. It was about 1.5 tons or something. And the guy there, the owner, Graham, he said, oh, my God, Colin, what have you brought me? It's just so mixed up. It's a shambles. And so my first hard lesson was, do some research.
Right.
Because there are 90-odd grades of paper. And
Hmm.
I had about 17 mixed up in one bundle on the back of this van. And the net
Right.
value, I still remember this number. It's seared in my brain. I earned £6.34 that afternoon.
Wow.
And I'd been
Okay.
at it a month. It was awful. Well, you learn, don't you? I got quite good at it, and I knew how to grade paper within. I mean, it's a hard lesson to learn, and within weeks, I was filling the van up with 50, 60, 70 quid's worth of paper, and I suddenly it started to roll,
Hmm.
and I loved it. I loved it. Me on my own, king of the road. I mean, in a dangerous van, earning pennies, but it was my pennies. It was my
Yes.
van, and I was in charge. And it just, and I could talk to all these facilities managers that I knew from the window cleaning and say, what if I came around and started collecting your paper? And that was the beginning of it. That was where it started.
Wow. So did that also include things like, because you mentioned the banks and Canary Wharf, of course, is a banking hub in London. Did that include things like confidential waste as well, or were you just picking up just regular paper to begin with?
To begin with, the regular paper. Eventually, I bought myself a shredder, quite a big machine. Nothing like the scale that you see in some places, but it was good enough. And we started doing a confidential service. We expanded it to take in plastic cups, the toner cartridges from laser printers, aluminium cans. So it actually became the first ever combined waste recycling materials service in the whole of London. And cardboard as well, and it was really innovation, real innovation, and loads of people. I just kept winning clients. We had the BBC, Unilever, KPMG, Ernst and Young, British Airways, all these massive blue chip companies, and it was fantastic, such a great experience. I
Yeah.
ended up taking over the paper merchants that had originally given me £6.34 for my
Oh,
first
wow.
load. They sold up, and I moved into that depot and took on the baling press, which was this huge piece of kit which enabled me to export the paper to Turkey, to Germany, to Holland, because you could put it on big lorries, big trucks. It was very exciting indeed.
That's amazing. Yeah. So how did you so you went from this clapped out van that was not roadworthy. How quickly did you expand, and how did you manage to expand your business so fast?
Yeah, I got a bit lucky. One of the chaps actually that I worked with, when I resigned, I finally had to resign because I had so much to collect. I couldn't do it in either end of the day and in lunchtimes. It got to that point where, and of course there was no part-time arrangement. It was all or nothing. So I had to leave the job, hand back the company car, and rely on my wits to make a full living. And at that point, one of the chaps who worked with me said, "Colin, I'm liking what you're doing. Are you looking for any investment?" And I said, "Well, actually, I desperately need a roadworthy van." And so he gave me a few £1,000s, and I managed to buy a proper van. And that was kind of when we started to become something a bit more serious. Because literally, this other vehicle was scarily dangerous. I couldn't take it on the road for any length of time. It was just impossible. And the more paper you put on it, the worse the brakes got. It just, it was scary. Anyway, we got this new vehicle, and that kind of made it look much more respectable. And I think the secret, and the secret I pass on to almost every business person any budding business person, the secret was absolute reliability. And I got quite a bit of business later on from people phoning me up because they'd been let down.
Right.
And I thought, I'm not ever going to give that inch. I'm never going to give the client the thought that, oh, Colin's let me down, I'm going to go out and find somebody else.
Cool.
Because I knew that was the way I was getting into companies. I would be knocking on their door. No, it's all right. We've got someone. We're happy with our arrangement. And then the minute that arrangement fails, they were on the phone to me. So reliability was the absolute key. So I made sure that I had access to a van rental at 6 o'clock in the morning. I had emergency tyre repair service. I had spare battery in the depot. I had temporary drivers that I could call at a short notice. Did everything I could to make sure we would get there one way or another. So yeah, that was, and then of course, once you start to get a reputation in one sector, so we got one oil company, Marathon Oil. They merged with somebody now, and once we got Marathon, we got 6 or 7 others within about 6-7 weeks. We just went in and said, we've got Marathon Oil, and Chevron went, and Conoco went, and the same with telecommunications, or, and the accountants, Ernst & Young, KPMG, Deloitte, they all came in. Once you get one, if they're doing it. So we just went down those seams, and it was amazingly effective.
You mentioned when we were preparing for this call that you had put out an ad for drivers. I think it was for this business, right? And tell us a story about that.
The most salutary experience of my life. As I said, I've never actually been unemployed, so that I hadn't really come across mass unemployment. But in 1991, we were in a recession, you may remember, and I faxed over a job vacancy for a driver's mate, very low paid, dirty job, to the job centre, which was in Brixton, about half a mile away. It was 4:10, I think it was. I wasn't expecting anyone to turn up that day. Thought, we'll get somebody maybe at 9 o'clock tomorrow, 10 o'clock. And then my forklift driver comes up to me and says, Colin, what on earth are all these people doing outside? I said, what do you mean? It's like 4:45.
Yeah.
They came down and I counted them. There were 80 people queuing up around the block for this one job. They'd seen it in the job centre and rushed round, and we just had. Mm-hmm. But not only was it the men coming, they brought their wives and girlfriends with them. It was the most incredible, sad, pathetic group of people I've ever seen in my life, just desperate for this job. And of course, you can only take one person. So the first person who had a clean driving license and could start tomorrow was the one I told.
Got the job.
Just got the job.
Right.
I mean, how do you interview? How can you go through any rational process with that sort of volume of people? And when I offered him the job, he did a Scottish reel in my office. He was so happy.
Wow.
And it was just, I remember it vividly today and how exciting he was. And it just dawned on me over the next few weeks, just by being able to say, yes, you can have a job, and it's pretty obvious, but you can change people's lives. Mm-hmm. And I got such a buzz out of that. And I needed lots of people. The business was growing. I needed drivers. I had 3 vehicles by then. I had, processing, shipping to Turkey. I had all sorts of very labour-intensive jobs. So we made a thing of employing some really tough people straight out of prison. I mean, they literally came out of Brixton prison, came straight down, saw the job centre, came into my depot, and I gave them a job. It was so rewarding. People, I still see people who I employed back then, and they often come up to me and said, they've often said, you got me going, got me started, you kicked start, got me back in. But also the other thing about it was, I remember having one guy he was divorced, and he got into his wife had blown the credit card, but she'd left. They couldn't track her, they could track him, so they were after him for this huge debt. And he was desperate. He was really, really stressed out. And I said, when we got to the bottom of the problem, I said, well, let me phone them up. And I just spoke to them, and, just in a rational way, I'm this chap's employer. What's the problem? can we come to some sort of payment arrangement? And he owed I think it was about £3,000, which in those days was a crippling amount. And so he would be on about £150, £200 a week. So yes, that's an enormous debt. And we got a payment arrangement of £10 a month.
Right.
And he just couldn't. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. But but that's what I mean. It wasn't just that I gave them a job. I could, at no real cost to myself, help people through all sorts. I spoke to their landlords. I got one guy who was just about to be evicted, and I got onto the landlord and stopped him being evicted. I got social services involved in another. But it was a little bit of time, but it didn't cost anything. And you could make such a difference in that just by just putting yourself out a bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the Paper Cycle was effectively a social enterprise. The term didn't exist in 1989. And so I was one of the first to start one of these sort of entities that's a socially and environmentally minded business. It makes a profit, it pays people, it pays the rent, it engages in contracts, but its primary purpose isn't to make money, it's to benefit these external things like people for jobs and in my case, and the environment. And so I became a social entrepreneur. That's what people started to call me. And
Right.
I've set up several businesses since then, all very different, but fundamentally about recycling. So I've recycled office furniture, computers, any number of things, and but all from commercial sources, so commercial streams of waste. So going to these same people and saying, "Can I take your furniture? Can I take this? Can I take that?" And on the way, training people, supporting people, employing people, training people how to fix computers. So we were collecting them, clearing the deck, clearing the disk, and then training people how to fault find to fix it and put it back in, and then distributing low-cost computers around the estates in Brixton at a time where the digital divide was enormous and the cost of accessing IT was really prohibitive for people on benefits.
Right.
So, just loved it. Just found it a very rewarding process. You could help people make some money, pay your mortgage, and do business. I love that idea. I can provide a service that a client, a blue chip company wants. I can get paid for that service, and in the process of doing that, create opportunities for people who, frankly, didn't have any opportunities. And so, this combination of being able to do, some wheeling and dealing and getting business, but at the same time helping people at the other end, just to me was like magic.
Yeah. So that set you on a mission, right? You started a mission to be able to help others. And I read, I think within your profile, that you kind of set off on a mission to create 1 million jobs for people.
Yes. So Greenworks was my last big recycling business. And Greenworks became quite a big entity. We had 5 depots across the country in Glasgow, just outside Glasgow, Bristol, Wolverhampton, and 2 in London. And we were handling staggering amounts. I mean, articulated lorry loads of office furniture. And some days we would get 6 articulated lorry loads in a depot on a day. I mean, the vast amounts that these big banks, it was mainly the finance sector, were, when HSBC moved to Canary Wharf, they got rid of all of the furniture that they owned in the City of London, which was equivalent of 7,000 people's worth of furniture. So 7,000 desks, 7,000 swivel chairs, 3,000 meeting room chairs, just everything. We get the lot. We processed everything. And of course, that's very labor intensive. So I could create, literally dozens, scores of jobs and employ loads and loads of people in all sorts of aspects. And that that was the mission, really. We want to create. So my franchises were with other social organisations that were looking to create work in their communities, like in Paisley, like in St Paul's in Bristol, like in Wolverhampton, who were desperate for labour intensive work, and I could come along and say, well, I need an operation here because I've got an account with this big bank, number of banks in Birmingham. You can take the furniture, employ the people, and we'll we'll generate some revenue for your organisation.
Mm-hmm.
Just an amazing journey, and that really was the mission. So when that closed, is after the 2008 recession, the banking industry sort of started to see sense. The reason I was able to run Greenworks is because the banking industry was just so horrifically wasteful. Would throw away quite new desks just because they were having to move. Mm-hmm. Well, that all ended in 2008-9, and so it became progressively harder to get huge, big volumes, and we had this huge infrastructure. So that really wasn't viable, and that we had to close it. And at the point of closing, I wrote a book, How to Make a Million Jobs. It's still on Amazon, on ebook. And then I'd worked with several governments worth of employment schemes aimed at supporting and subsidising people who were long-term unemployed. So, of course, I was eligible for some of those schemes as the employer. And very few of them really got it right. They were inadequate funding, and they didn't support the employer. And I realised that actually there were some of the schemes worked and some didn't. And I wrote this book to say we've really got to reform the way government approaches long-term unemployment. And there's a better way of doing this. And this book was the advocacy for that method. Right. Still to be adopted, by the way. Sadly, that's. I've put it in front of a lot of different people, a lot of ministers, and I still hope that people will take it up. But and the main problem, a lot of these schemes, when someone's been unemployed for a very long time, they really struggle with getting up to pace with work. Mm-hmm. Often don't. If you're quite young and you haven't really worked, you don't even understand concepts like work. Particularly if you haven't had that parental upbringing. So these are the people I'm talking about. Have been not exposed to work, even from young when their parents were not working.
Yeah.
And as a consequence don't have that embedded, what I call social employability skills, you take for granted when you've worked and your parents worked, like turning up on time, like getting out of bed, like taking instruction from foremans and supervisors. All of this stuff is alien. So they start working with you and you tell them to go and do something, and they say, "What are you talking to?" "Well, I'm your boss." Not just I'm paying you to pick that up, incredible stuff. I was telling the story to somebody else the other day. One of these chaps climbed onto the roof and started to have a cigarette.
Oh.
I mean, who does that?
Yeah.
I mean, you literally cannot predict when you're you're dealing with that type of dysfunction. So I'm talking about people that in the jargon are a long way from the jobs market.
Right.
I'm not talking about people that have just been sacked on Friday and looking for a job on Monday. I'm not talking about those people. And the demands on the employer, you can imagine the supervisory, the discipline, the structure you need to support people like that, because you can get them through that, but it's hard and it's painful. And most employers would just, that guy on the roof, just sack him. I mean,
yeah.
Probably you can't have this. Well, I wouldn't. I mean, if they did it the second time, that's a whole different thing, but we would be able to get them off the roof and talk to them and say, that's not really the way this works here. And you do that again. And, That's the end of it, sort of thing. But we were able to demonstrate to them that there was a better way.
Right.
But it takes time.
As
and
an employer, though, you kind of mentioned that in many cases, an employer would say, well, just sack them. But how much investment of time and effort did it need to help bring these social skills and employable skills into people? And at what point did you recognize that, okay, I can't do any more for this person, I'm going to have to let them go, because there's a finite amount of time and resource that you have available, right?
Absolutely. I mean, but that's the thing that makes it real. If say we were running quite a big factory in Greenwork, so there would be quite a lot of people there. There would be 20, 30, 40 people there in times. So the discipline of, and we let people go, we sacked people quite frequently, because there was a point, sort of 2 strikes, 3 strikes, and you're out. If you keep doing this, you will go. But that kind of made it real. So this is a real job. This isn't a plastic job in a lovely, cuddly charity that's going to be really nice. We will be really nice, but there's an edge here, and there's got to be performance. We've got furniture coming from blue chip companies. We've got people coming in the door to buy it, from headmasters, social services, all sorts of charities are coming in. If you're not going to do the job, then I'm sorry, we need people who are going to be here and be respectable. If you don't want to do that, there's the limit. So I can't help everybody.
Yeah.
But actually just seeing that, just demonstrating that this is for real, actually helped work with the others. Not in a negative way, but just by saying to them, there's a service standard here. This is real. You get paid to do this. This is a job. And there's certain standards that we need to uphold here. And that kind of gave it more credibility. So it's all part of the reputation you have to build, that you're fair, you're right, but you're firm as well, and you can only tolerate so much.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, after you've built some momentum around this, then almost like the rest of the staff are also managing that process for you as people are coming in. They're letting them know about what the rules are and how the structure is and all those sorts of things. So the challenges you have probably reduce over time, because other people are kind of letting these newcomers know that actually this is what you got to do. This is how you got to operate.
This is how it is. Yeah. And actually, and all the supervisors, because you can't, I needed proper warehouse managers, qualified warehouse managers. We had a joinery department where we had a big computer-aided machinery cutting up the old desks. We needed a CNC operator. Well, none of these have come through social services or anything. I mean, that's not the route. So I was recruiting regular, managers and supervisors, and clearly I recruited with some degree of empathy. And I said, when you come in here, the people you will be managing will be people who've not worked before, and there will be challenges. But I will back you all the way, and we do occasionally have to sack people, but I do want you to work with them and give them, a little bit more rope, a bit more opportunity, and that's the job right from the first interview. If you and I had to let go some of the managers because they couldn't do it. I said, you just don't fit here. So getting that balance right was always an issue. I remember we had so the next evolution, we were taking on long-term unemployed people, and I thought, okay, so I really want to see if I can help people who are serving in prison. And there's the prison system has a what they call release on temporary license. So towards the end of a sentence, people are allowed out on day release, if you like, to kind of re-engage with the world, particularly if it's a long sentence. And I went down to this women's prison down in South London and met this lady. I'll call her Karen, and she was in for 6 years for arson.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to employ her in a furniture warehouse.
Right.
So that caused quite a lot of angst, shall we say. Anyway, she came into the warehouse, and at first, she was the first one, and she wanted to do administration. She'd learned admin skills in prison, and to be honest, her heart wasn't in it. When she came to work, we gave her quite a bit of stuff, and she was okay, but she was a definite sort of 6 out of 10. It wasn't it wasn't quite working, but it wasn't disastrous either. It was just kind of, well, I don't think your heart's really quite in this. Anyway, but of course the thing is here, if I said anything to the prison authorities, she'd just go straight back and never come out again. So
Right.
you have to, it's not like they get a second chance, it's nothing. So, and I thought, well, he's not doing anything, it's not really bad. What we used to do after a fortnight, we would move people around the warehouse. There was credit control, there was marketing, there was HR, there was lots of things you could be doing in the business. And anyway, she came to me after about 2 weeks and said she'd seen the shop floor where we dismantle the furniture. So a lot of the furniture is rubbish, that's why it's being thrown away, and it needs to be broken down into its constituent plastic, metal, wood parts. And that's very physical. You don't mess about with, you don't unscrew it gently, it's just bash, bash, bash. And I had some Polish and Jamaican guys down there who were rough and ready sorts, and I'd always thought, we should be doing this better. It should be cleaner, neater, safer. But I wasn't there every day, and I had kind of worried about it. Anyway, so I said, well, yes, if you want to go down to the shop floor, yeah, why not, if that's what you want to do. So she went down to the shop floor, and I came back 4 days later, Sanjay, and the place was entirely transformed.
Right.
It was wood and metal and plastic and skips loaded properly. And the work bay was, they were hammering in the direction so anything that fell would go against the wall and it wasn't going to go everywhere. It was miraculous. And this young lady of 28, 29, who'd spent a big chunk of time of her 20s in prison, had got these pretty tough guys sorted out.
Yeah.
And completely arranged. And where I'd had lots of grumblings about bringing a prisoner into the workshop, when she left, because she actually lived in Wales, so when she was finally released from prison, she went home. So she left us. People coming up to me and saying, can we keep her? Is there any way we can keep her? So, again, that was just one of the most fabulous moments, because all this doubt and people basically talking behind my back and saying we shouldn't be taking on somebody like this. Yes. And me having to say, well, that's the ethic that we have here. That's what you signed up for. Turned completely on its tail to people actively wanting her to stay. And, can we give her a pay rise? Can we do this? Can we do that? And, of course, we couldn't because she was going to go too far away. But, yeah, very rewarding.
Yeah, these are amazing stories that you've got, Colin, and fair play to you for putting this sort of structure together in your business to employ people who potentially wouldn't have been able to, get a job and giving them those skills. So what do you do today? What's the sort of role that you have now?
Well, after I wrote that book, the thing I wrote about was that, so I just have to wind back a bit, Sanjay, so it's all pertinent to it. But one of the basic constructs of the book was that the really entrenched long-term unemployment is also geographically concentrated. So these areas that I had these franchises in were the sorts of areas where there's an enormous number of people who've been unemployed for a long time. And of course, the idea was, the Norman Tebbit thing, get on your bike and go and get a job. Well, I wanted to turn that on its head because actually so few people are socially mobile. So the sorts of, they've got care responsibilities, they've got family, they've got stuff, they can't just, if you're a very young man without any responsibilities, you can get on your bike. But actually nobody else can. And so I think the job should come to the place. And So in the book, I was thinking, well, who is it? Because typically commercial businesses will go to nicer places to work. That's where they can recruit and get people to come to work because it's a nicer place to be. And so there's real challenges getting businesses to start in these poor areas. But of course, social enterprises do, because their raison d'etre is to do something good in the communities that need it. And let's put it, the rents are cheap. So could we have a program of encouraging social enterprises to come into these areas and create work? That was kind of one of the big concepts of the book. Anyway, so having written that, I started a new business called Tree Shepherd, which was designated to kind of trying to create that sort of, put some flesh onto that idea. And but then I suddenly thought, there's another set of people who would create jobs in rundown areas. And those are the people that live there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
could I train some of those people with the skills I'd learned the hard way of running a business? Could I train some of those people to run their own business in the areas where they lived? And we would know that they would recruit locally, because that's what small businesses tend to do, and people recruit in their own image. And so I set this thing up called Tree Shepherd, and for 10 years we trained unemployed and people on benefit to start businesses in Brixton and Southwark and elsewhere across London. And it was an amazing success. There's so much energy, so much talent, so much pent-up skill in these communities that, and with a bit of help and with advice, networking, confidence boosting, but an access to money sometimes and some free space. We kind of did a bit of lobbying the council and managed to beg, borrow, and steal certain things. And we could help people get a business started. They're not big businesses, but they're businesses that help people, earn a bit of income. So I learned in that process. So this is finally, I'm getting to answer your question. I became effectively a business coach. So over 10 years, I coached scores, if not hundreds, of people how to set a business up. And I think I was quite good at it. And we also began to help lots of very established businesses, long-term market traders and things, who frankly had never been on a business course in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we developed a business course for existing businesses that haven't actually gone through any business training. And so when I left that just after COVID, after 10 years, and then Sandra's taken it over and she's running it superbly, I set myself up as a business coach.
Right.
So I support startups, I support small businesses, people employing, say, up to maybe 30 staff who are still very much hands-on, but are trying not to be, because it's exhausting and they're working Saturdays and Sundays and they never get home for the kid's birthday or bath time, or they're doing VAT returns on Sunday night, all this stuff. Those people. I know that land. I've been there, I've done that. But I've also think, after 30 years of running my own business, I've also worked out how to avoid that trap.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a book called Prosper with Purpose, which is dedicated to the small businesses of this country who do those 7 days a week to try and keep the business going. And it's full of very simple tips that and exercises to help people change the way they operate their business, to give them more time out and to actually make the business more fulfilling and actually more successful. And that's what I coach. So I take people on that journey. And again, hugely rewarding, just seeing when the penny drops, you're asking questions about you can't see it you can't see the wood for the trees when you're involved in the business.
Yes.
And so I provide that external sort of a helicopter look focus, and I can shine a light in places where they don't even look. And then I'll ask a question and they'll suddenly go, "Oh, you're right. Oh, my word." And it's not every conversation, but you get enough of them to make it worth the while. And yes, I've helped multiple businesses. I've got a metric, it's a kind of internal metric. Can I help my clients go on holiday?
Okay, yeah, that's a good metric because people who are running their own businesses don't even have time for that, right?
Don't have time. So, but embedded in that metric is if you're going to go away for a week, wow, some people just can't even imagine going away for an hour. You have to have done a lot of stuff in the system and in the training and in the delegation to enable you to go away for a week without taking a phone call. I'm not taking.
Correct,
I'm not taking your. You're not. I'm not talking about taking your laptop with you and working on the beach. I'm talking about having a holiday.
Yeah.
And I've enabled 4 or 5 people in the last year to take a proper break and literally get away from hit the beach or whatever they did. But the iceberg under the water there of that, all of the system change to make that holiday happen, incredible, but transformatory.
This is the system, it's the mindset, it's the operational processes they have, it's staffing, there's a multitude of things there, right?
Everything.
All part of it. So yeah, I get that. So that's a great KPI to have, and I really admire you for using that as the driver, if you like, for the work you're doing. As you know, this is called Success Matters.
Yes.
So on this journey you've been on, how has definition of success changed for you, and what does success mean for you now?
Oh yeah, but I think it's always, at first actually it was tons or truckloads or some measurable volume or weight of the stuff that I was recycling. That's where I got in, and I'd say, oh, we've recycled X tons this year, this week, or this whatever. And of course that's what I was reporting to my clients. I would tell them in that. But as I, with this journey with unemployed people, when I started to write something, and I thought the thing that was coming out in my writing was the stories of the people I'd helped. And for me, that's success. I've got tremendous memories of people, of people just growing, over a period of weeks and months, in front of my very eyes, as employable people and members of society, from being completely unable to engage, give you eye contact, grunting at the interview almost, and then literally watching them change and just develop and become really sociable, lovely, diligent people. And that for me is that level of success. And that's translated. I still have that. I mentioned the book, and I'm still lobbying, and I'm trying to get some traction on some of my ideas. But so that is still there. That does not gone. Yeah. And I would love to be able to make some progress on that. But day to day, my success looks like, have I helped my clients get a better handle on their business and be able to run it more sustainably? And when I say sustainably, that means not just financially, of course, it means that, but it sustainably in terms of their health, their mental health, their relationship health. If you're working 80 hours a week, where does your partner fit in? Where do your children fit in? Where does your mum and dad fit in? So many things get broken or compromised if you're working that sort of number of hours. It's the personal health. And I've, several of my clients have been very ill, and we've had to take 2 or 3 month pauses while they've, had to go through some procedure or something. So it's, it's a very live issue.
Yes. Yeah. That burnout and that kind of almost overworking, it's so easy to end up in that situation. It's almost like a cliff edge. You arrive at it and then you fall over it without realizing that the cliff edge is there, right? It's like the fog is covering it, and then you're over.
And the body just gives up on you, just suddenly.
Yeah, your body gives up, yeah. So you've got to really recognize that. I have a tradition on this podcast of asking a previous guest for a question for
Yeah,
my
you
next
did
guest.
tell me about this, and I'm
I,
slightly
I did tell
anxious
you.
as to what it's going to be.
I actually think this has got a really good linkage to everything you've spoken about. And
Okay.
so her question was, how do you connect with your true self and bring that to your business?
Oh, yeah, I love that question because that's actually a question that, I'm almost asking that for most of my clients. Not quite that phraseology, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Yes, well, I think you've heard from what I've said. For me, it's got to have purpose. I've had a few clients or people I've spoken to, potential clients, that have wanted me to help them make more money. And if that's all they want, I'm really not the guy. There's somebody down the road that can really get your metrics, in sharpen up your profit margin and do much more for you.
Yeah.
So I just, that's not me. I want to I want to offer a more holistic thing. Oh, you will make more money with me. That's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to do a bigger job.
Yeah.
And I'm going to help your staff as well.
It's a bit like Simon Sinek's why, right? If you've got your why, which is your purpose, then things fall into place. But if it's just that what, which is more money, then yeah, as you say, there's people who can help you with that, with your metrics. But is it really going to be a sustainable business in the context we've just spoken about as well, of something that you can do, you can leave and take some time off, and all of those factors that make for a sustainable business. So yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I am motivated by money. I like nice things. Don't get me wrong,
Yes.
but I don't need or it doesn't. I don't put that as I'm not going to chase that to the infinite end. There's going to be I don't want it that much. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the purpose and the values, right? That's more important than the money. Money will flow. Do you have a question for my next guest?
Yeah, it's kind of very similar, I suspect, but I'll try and rephrase it a little bit. Well, I think what I want to ask them is, what do they do to get away from what do they do to get away from things?
What do they do to get away from things? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Is there anything you do in particular to get away from things?
Cycling.
Cycling.
Two things that are utterly incompatible, actually. I go cycling or bird watching, and you can't really do both, not simultaneously. So I'm on my bike on a Sunday, and on Saturday I might take the binoculars out.
Okay. Yeah, is there any particular favourite spot for your bird watching?
I found a place on the Thames estuary down near Higham very recently with a friend, which is just a fantastic spot. You're right away from everything. Very sort of post-industrial gravel pit type area, but loads of birds. Fantastic place to be. But to be honest, almost anywhere, as long as it's not too built up, a pair of binoculars is amazing what you can see if you stop to look.
That's true. Yeah, if you stop to observe what's going on around you, it's amazing what you can see.
It's amazing what's there. Yes, it really is. Even my local park, there's more there than you would imagine when you just walk through to get a train or something.
Yeah, indeed. So it's been a fascinating conversation, Colin. I've got one last question, which is around your MBE. So for those that don't know what an MBE is, if you could explain it, and could you also explain how you came about earning that?
Oh, crikey. Yes, of course. Well, an MBE is a member of the British Empire, which is an extraordinarily old-fashioned and colonial sort of title, and it's the least important of the medals that the Queen gives. So there's an MBE, an OBE, and a CBE. So the MBE was awarded to me. The citation says services to disadvantaged people and the environment. And so this thing of combining environmental services with employing people. And despite the colonial consequences, I was delighted to accept.
Yeah.
The idea that I could take my wife and my children to Buckingham Palace, and they could watch me. I met Prince William, and just a very extraordinary honour. And and completely out of the blue, because it's all done anonymously. You don't know who's.
Right.
You just literally get a letter in the post and big cardboard envelope, and you think, what on earth is this from the Cabinet Office? I have no contact with the Cabinet Office. Why are they writing to me? And then quite extraordinary.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes, to get that letter. So if people want to find out more about the work you're doing, or to get in touch with you, or share their ideas around social enterprise, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, my website is Intentionality, and that's the best. That's probably the best place. But also, of course, my LinkedIn profile, which is Colin Crooks MBE. So either route, very happy to connect with people and meet with them and talk about how we can fix the stigma of unemployment.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Colin, for a very fascinating conversation and some wonderful stories of the businesses that you set up, and wish you well with Intentionality.
Thank you, Sanjay. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.